Right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the board meeting of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. This is our last meeting of this calendar year, so perhaps we can all wish you in advance of Christmas a very happy Christmas and prosperous New Year, because you won't be seeing this again until the New Year. Why don't we? We'll be recording this. This will be on our website after the meeting. We don't have any members of the public here. You're all very welcome to join us. Can we just start with apologies for absence, James?
Yeah, we've got apologies from Councillor Murphy. We are expecting Councillor Burden to join us soon.
Great, and we have Fred Marudis is not that well, but joining us online. So good to see you, Fred.
Thanks, Simon.
Right. Any declarations of interest other than the standing declarations of interest for our planning committee members? No, nothing there. Then we have our part 1 minutes of our meeting on the 18th of October. Everyone happy for those representatives of their record of the meeting? Yes. Great, thank you very much. Then we have actions. We have our I think everything is closed apart from one item, which EDC guidance on expectations for environmental improvements and report to the board later in the spring of 2024. So we're just waiting for that. But otherwise, I think everything is in good order. We have our forward look for 2024 contained within this. Before we get into the main business of the day, Izzy, you have been our board apprentice here from the government programme. You've been here for a year?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, good. This is your last meeting. It has obviously been a pleasure for us to have you to participate in this, not only for what you can bring to the Development Corporation, but also for the way in which we can assist you in the development of your future career. So I think on behalf of the board and everyone at the Development Corporation, we wish you all the best for your future career. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Hopefully it's been a rewarding experience.
It's been a great experience.
Great, right, good. And you bought everyone some chocolate, so forever be forever in their hearts. Good luck getting them off Jeremy. So great. Why don't we just move on then to the first paper of the day. Ian, it's the Chief Executive's Part 1 Strategic Report. Ian, please.
Thank you, Simon. Only 2 or 3 matters covered in the paper today. The first one is just to finalise the matter of the criteria to be adopted for deciding which part of the board meeting, the part 1 public or the part 2 private parts of the meeting matters would go to. If you remember, board will recall that we discussed this last time and agreed that there was some tweaking needed to some wording around the planning enforcement aspect of that. Mark subsequently, Neil agreed on some wording, which I think settled. So we just wanted to bring this back to you to formally approve that final set of wording. A note about the business planning process, we've begun that, but this is really just a citer for you to tell you that we're on that, and we'll be back in January with a draft of a business plan for next year. That will then come back to you for comment in January, and then we'll bring it back again in March for sign off for a lesson part. So that's just to let you know get on with that work. And then my own recognition and thanks to Izzy for being part of the board over the last year and reflected there. I mean, Izzy and I have had follow-ups to most of the board meetings, and it's actually been a very helpful exercise, I think, for me, because it's meant I've been able to stop and reflect and get some feedback on how the board is conducted and how we present matters as the executive, and get a reflection from Izzy on that as well. So that's been really helpful. So I've got something from it as well, Izzy, and I very much hope that you do. We wish you all the very best from the staff team in the future. We have entered the programme again, as mentioned at 4.2, and we've got a new board apprentice that will be joining us in the new year, Richard Garden. So we look forward to welcoming Richard, but today is really about saying goodbye to it. Thank you very much, and do keep in touch.
Exactly. Good, thank you, Ian. So in 2.3, we have final suggested criteria. Can I ask us the board, John? Good to see you. Don't worry, just started. Can I ask do people have comments on what is proposed there in terms of generally happy? Good. Good, thank you, Fred. And any other comments on Ian's part one paper? Which is for noting. All right, Ian, you got away lightly there. Thank you very much for that. Why don't we come then into marketing and communications, Caroline?
Good afternoon, everyone. It feels like it's been some time since I've been here. I will take a paper as read, just a few exciting highlights to summarise and flag for your attention. The last time we met, we were on task to launch the new EDC website, which is now live, and we are continuing to monitor feedback and performance from a variety of methods, and looking towards 2024, we will now be implementing the new website accessibility guidance. But for the large part, the new website has been well received by the public and our stakeholders, and we are utilising the new Contact Us form, which we didn't have previously on our old website, and our digital newsletter sign up tabs at the bottom, all to strengthen the way that we communicate with our stakeholders. And again, this wasn't previously available on our old website, so that's all very positive. The next key item I will mention, partly because I was there, but it's very much a team effort. EDC was successful in winning the Judges' Choice Award at the Government Property Awards, which was in September. So that was awarded to us by Chief Property Officer Mark Chivers. That was a really proud moment for the entirety of EDC, and we were there, and it was a great day to network with other teams across the department and showcase some of the great work that's going on. Ebbsfleet Living is currently out on a print run to be distributed to residents this week. So apologies, we've just missed the print run to get you guys all a physical copy for some light reading. But the digital copies will be available next week, and we'll soon be looking forward to launching the 2024 edition of Ebbsfleet Living. And prep for 2024 overall will be taking up much of our time throughout December, just to make sure that we continue to take stock of learnings from the number of events and initiatives that we've run throughout 2023, and that we continue to champion kind of community engagement going into the new year. That's it from me. Quick whistle stop tour, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much for that. Any comments, observations? Neil.
There's just a comment which is slightly peripheral, so there isn't a direct question, I think, to you, Caroline, which is, in your report, you mentioned the resident satisfaction survey and how we're publicising it. It was really about that issue. I heard an interesting talk recently from somebody at Argent who developed King's Cross and are doing Brent Cross. And they have been looking into a flourishing index and measures of well-being, their regeneration projects. And I then, having heard this talk, I then spoke to one of the people at Argent who's responsible for this, and they're doing a bit of work with the university to see how you judge this. And I just wondered whether it's peripheral to your report, but I thought I'd raise it. Whether we ought to be thinking about something along those lines to measure the success of regeneration, not just in terms of resident satisfaction, which is very important, but general well-being and how we contribute to that. So it's just something that came across my path that I thought I would raise. So I've raised it under yours, because you've got a reference to the resident satisfaction survey. It's probably not for you, it may be for just to throw into the pool for people to think about.
You remember, Neil, that when we were looking at the KPIs had that conversation around the performance, the organisation. Jeremy introduced the idea of looking at the sense of community that was growing. We included some metrics in our KPIs this year, which were not about well-being, but they were about engagement. So we'll not say you're necessarily saying we should have it as a KPI, but we do have a the framework called.
So we have an evaluation framework. We have an outcomes framework which looks across all the measures, including health and well-being. So we look at that on a 5-yearly basis. The social value framework, which we're looking at today, is an annual basis. And in January, we'll bring you the resident satisfaction survey. So combined, they give us an overarching view of the subjective and objective data across annual and 5-year outcome measures.
But this is just an example of the flourishing index is looking at it as a whole. Social value that we're looking at, particularly in terms of contracts, we're looking at satisfaction. Just saying, is this something not as a KPI but could be looked into? And I'm happy to talk to Ian or whoever else outside the meeting.
So the flourishing index is a single index.
An index.
Captures those identified.
Yes, I may not have got.
Our evaluation frame might do the same, similar thing, but we'll have a look and into that and see whether it picks up similar sorts of metrics.
It's just a way of judging whether we're doing well, comprehensive. Yeah. I dread to use the word holistic because it's used for mean all sorts of things, but
okay, I'm very happy to have a chat about that outside.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments on this? Yes, Valerie.
Just quickly, it was great to see the website, the dwell time has virtually doubled into, I suppose, new pages, people spending longer looking at it. But we are still seeing this sort of decline in interest, aren't we? Kind of the more sort of social media activity, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, X and so on. And I wondered, I mean, X in particular is having really bad press, isn't it, about sort of mischievous, benevolent influence and so on and so forth. Should we be flipping the time that we spend, given we've got limited resources, into other media, maybe LinkedIn and just the web as opposed to the other social media? Just, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. X is, as you say, in a bit of a hot pot of its own, particularly since it's been taken over by Elon Musk. In response to that, Instagram launched their own platform, Threads, which is linked to your Instagram ownership. So we very much can straddle Instagram and Threads. Threads is a Twitter-like response to Twitter. Our ambition, I think, at this moment is, as you say, limited resources to make sure that we are able to focus our attention on the platforms that work well. It very may well be the case that come the new year, we kind of launch a new Thread account and be able to use that as an opportunity to strengthen the performance of our comms. I don't think X is working very well for many people anymore, but we still have those valuable legacy connections that I would be hesitant to lose. But it would just mean a case that in our planning for 2024, we look at how frequently we post on X and how we engage and when we choose to engage. So that's something that we'll be looking at for 2024. But I'm tentatively planning that we'll launch our Threads account and just look to review how often we use X. Because we're not the only ones that are declining in activity and interest.
Thank you.
Yes.
I hesitate to get involved, but this is a contrary view because it always is for me. But I think it's a sign of health, actually. That I mean, you think about a really great community that you live in. Do you ever measure that by saying how many people are visiting the website or the social media of the people who planned it? It's just not the way people live, is it? I mean, people live by communicating with each other. And when we started this, it was really important for us to communicate. And it still is important. I'm not saying it's not important. But I think we need to be prepared for a shock, which is that we will gradually become less and less important to people as the place grows. And I think that's really good because I don't know. I know roughly you built my house, but I wouldn't, you know, I don't send them Christmas cards. You know, it's all over and done. You got a community, haven't you? And you talk to the people around you, and you talk to the clubs, societies, and Facebook pages, and you get angry with people, and you think, well, why is somebody wasting their time on social media talking about that? And I just think that's a really healthy sign. So I think we need to be there with factual, you say, that heritage, legacy, connection, and what we've done. But I don't think it's a measurement issue or a worrying issue. I just think we should put stuff out there, and if they want it, they want it. Someone will find it, and then they'll put it on the things that matter to them.
And just in answer to that quickly, I agree. In short, I would be more concerned if our performance in Facebook, for example, wasn't as well as it was, because that is a really useful way for us to engage with residents and those that are at the heart of what we're doing. LinkedIn, again, is a really valuable way for us to engage with potential employees. X, I'm not that worried about, because as you say, it's social media is so transitional. There will always be a lifetime for each platform, and I think X, this is not its time to shine. So we're kind of putting our efforts where we have most capability to engage with the people that we need to engage with.
Yeah, look, I think it's a good debate. X is swamped with AI generated bots. So until you've got unique identification on some of these, I think that was actually one of the interesting things from the interview which Elon Musk did with the Prime Minister, that's got to happen quickly through paid subscription. Otherwise, all of these platforms are susceptible to being taken over by people you think are real but aren't real and influencing you. But the one that I find by far the most useful for the development corporation is LinkedIn, you know, because it's not a battle for ideas platform. People are slugging it out there. It's more a professional network, so you do get the opportunity to project what's going on in the development corporation to, you know, a like-minded, interested, and engaged audience. So that's definitely my current favourite for the development corporation. Just my personal view, and we've got a little guide to it in book, which so if you've got an account, it's a good way to project what we're doing, and if you haven't got one, I'll get one because it's useful. So anyway, that's my view. Anything else on social media? Can't put to rights in this board meeting, but it is what it is. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Great work.
Thanks.
Well done. Mark,
My current keywords are stupid, useless bloke. They seem to crop up on everything that sort of points to my profile now.
really?
If you put that's what they say about me on Facebook. Yeah, it's awful. Yeah, it's me too.
They're bots. They don't know the truth. They don't know the truth. Your nose in the water at some peril in some of these things. All right, Mark, planning, design and delivery report.
Thank you, Simon. So yeah, usual update from me, development sites update contained in section 1. I think it's fair to say there has been a slowing of new applications, a slowing of decisions. There's been various applications that are on the books for a while now where developers don't really feel much sort of momentum around trying to get revised plans in and addressing consultation details. So we've been trying to get, you know, for example, dates agreed on some decisions, and actually some developers are wanting decisions further down the line than we would actually be normally asking for. So obviously trying to you know, continue to sort of you know, move things through the system as best we can. Housing numbers, yeah, section 2, so we're at 367. This data for this month is only from Ashmore and Cable Wharf, so that's countryside and Chemo. We'll obviously try to get complete picture in January as part of the Q3 reporting. Committee update in section 3. So we are still awaiting confirmation from the department around the KCC nominee and the independent member. So I think that's with they need to go through their internal approvals and then it will then go up to ministers. Various other things in section 4. So validation checklist, probably something I haven't mentioned previously. It's a bit of a sort of a necessary piece of work that we have to do every couple of years. So yeah, 12 responses in terms of the consultation on that. So we'll be reporting that to planning committee in due course. Really good meeting that was led by the design team for the annual session of the design forum. We have an annual meeting with them where we can reflect on the work that they've done, the work that's coming through, and just get some feedback from them. So it's fair to say the group hasn't met as much as we had anticipated, but that's just a sign of various applications being delayed. And Frame, who run the forum for us, have said that is quite consistent with what they're seeing for other groups that they are running. And then in Annex B, there's a short note on the LURA, and just a few sort of key areas where things may be applicable to us moving forward. Obviously, an awful lot of elements of that need secondary legislation and they don't sort of kick in yet. The key thing for us, 4.9, is around planning fees. So that then kicks in on the 6th of December. So we're obviously aware of that, and we'll need to factor that into the income targets in due course. So I think that was it for me. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Board, any comments, observations? Neil.
Two separate ones. I'm going to try the first one, which on the dashboard, there's a red and an arrow going down on maintaining design quality during implementation, which, when one looks at it, that appears quite worrying, because we grant planning permission for schemes that we think are of appropriate high quality we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And I see that, and the question for you is, what are the difficulties that we're experiencing, and is there anything that can be done about it?
I think because I've been on leave recently, so actually that item was discussed in a team meeting when I wasn't here, or when I was looking through the papers, that one jumped out at me as well. And there had been a conversation in one of the team meetings, and I think that generally the planning officers and the design team felt that there had been an increased number recently of developers coming back to them to look at material changes, to be looking at various different design detailing. It did seem to be located on specific sites, but probably more sites than we'd had previously. Various different things down at Cable Wall, for example, have provided some challenges in relation to sort of ventilation systems and sort of various things. It feels like we're managing to hold the quality, but there's quite an increased pressure from multiple sources to try to reduce that because of cost. So I don't feel that overall they are cumulatively meaning that we're ending up with a worse product at the moment. And I think that it's really helpful when we have conversations in planning committee around some of the important design components of the scheme, that if any of those are ever renegotiated, then we can then say we'll need to bring that back to committee because it was an important point that was debated. But it just sort of felt cumulatively that there was a bit more of a problem there than there had been previously, hence the colour.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other one, completely different. You mentioned the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, and one of the changes, if and when it comes in, is that when making orders for development corporations, and this, I suppose, an order could be made after we were, even though we're up and running, would allow a development corporation to not only be planning decision-making authority, but plan-making authority. Where we got the leaders of the two councils who are the plan-making authorities sitting here, and I suspect that for us it would be too late because we're not at the beginning of the scheme. But I welcome your views on whether you think it would be advantageous to be a plan-making authority. I mean, I suspect we're too small, it would be resource intensive, and it's too late, but I'd welcome your views.
Yes, I don't think there would be value in that. I think that when we started, it did feel a little odd that we weren't, but I don't think that there would be value now. Doing a local plan is incredibly resource heavy, and I think that you need to think about the way in which the existing plans support what we're trying to deliver. And certainly the New Dartford plan is very clear on Ebbsfleet Garden City and strategic principles and looking at different policies per development site. And obviously as the Integration Plan moves through the process, be keen to obviously work with officers, just to sort of make sure that those sort of visioning areas are reflected in the plan. So as time's moved on, it almost feels like we're getting more aligned through the thinking within the development corporations and the way in which those are done. Those are reflected within the council local plan documents. So yeah, it's probably not something that's on my wish list at the moment.
I didn't think it would be, but I thought I'd raise it.
Right. Can I bring in Fred and then?
Yes,
Yep. Fred.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Simon. I too picked up on the design quality issue on that grid, and I don't know whether this, Mark, is a question for here or for planning committee. But to me, that needs to be at green. I don't think even amber is acceptable, which suggests that we need a pretty rapid plan to turn that around. I don't know what that might look like. I don't know whether it might mean more detail in the decisions or other things, but it would be, I think, important from my perspective to see how we are going to reverse that trend.
Okay, that's fine. I know that Simon Harrison has done some work around mechanisms to be trying to look at sort of maintaining that. So what we'll do is we'll look at bringing a short paper to the committee in December, so we can have a bit more of a chat about what the challenges are and how we can maybe address those. That's fine.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Fred. Valerie, can I bring you in? John?
Yes, it links to kind of both previous contributors actually around the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. You may not need to answer this, Mark, sorry. But I was thinking about this issue around material variations in planning, because again, and I know that there is no commencement date yet, but I do think we need to be sort of forewarned as forearmed sort of thing, because it presents yet another opportunity in many respects to erode, for example, the quality of the design that was approved at day one. And actually, I noticed, and partly because of reading this, we seem to get quite a lot of non-material amendments and or Section 73 applications and so on. But this is a bit of a minefield because there's no legal definition of what might be substantially different.
Yep.
But as we are literally trying to, develop a beautiful city, then it's really important, it seems to me, that we should think around this up front and ourselves try and define it, really. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think that I think we'll probably go through different sort of cycles of getting different non-material amendments, and sometimes they do relate to materials or maybe some design detailing. Some of those are quite sort of functional things as well. Some of those non-materials. And at one point, historically, there have been an idea about having Section 73 applications on reserved matters, and we shouldn't do that these days. So, yeah, I sort of feel like there is a reasonable amount to hold the line, as long as we are happy to say this is unacceptable, we're going to refuse this, and we need to then understand the implication of that through the appeal processes and then the impact that would then have on site. But yeah, as I said, I sort of don't feel that there's any big decisions that we feel really under pressure to sort of make that point about if we say no to this, it's going to stop something. It just sort of feels cumulatively that there's just a general sort of increase recently, but I think it's inevitable because of where we are in terms of the markets and everything like that. But yeah, certainly as and when those, as and when any secondary legislation comes out to explain what those amendment applications could be like, but obviously, yeah, we need to be aware of this. Yeah.
It's just, yeah, we just need to watch that quality issue, which is Fred said.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, John.
I must admit, I was going to avoid this conversation, but there's a lot of it ties around planning and planning acts and everything else. Under Neil's point, I personally wouldn't support bodies such as the EDC having plan making rights. So I don't think they are representative of the local communities. They don't tie into local communities. They can be removed by local communities, whereas politicians can be every 4 years. Whether that be a good or a bad thing, they can be got rid of. Bodies such as this just stay until the whim of a minister. So I don't see them as being that democratic in that sense. As far as the planning changes are concerned, it's a good thing that planning committees can get more fees. It helps any administration or anybody dealing with planning. I think it's a bit of fallacy personally to believe that by paying more, you're going to get a guaranteed time turnaround and output. That will never happen. I've never found any planning authority I've ever dealt with being actually truly responsive or understanding of an applicant. Doesn't matter how big or small the scheme is. They have their own merry way of doing it. If you don't like it, you get the classic answer. You don't like what we're telling you, we're going to refuse it. So either give us more time or do what we tell you, or you're going to get refused. And with the, if you look at the average rate of appeals, there's an 80-20 rule. Only 20% win on appeal normally, because everything's stacked against you. So you end up giving in. You end up giving in to more time. You let it drift. It costs you more money as a developer or an applicant. The only people who don't seem to care are the planning teams. And that really does frustrate me. I'm talking across the piece. Everyone I've ever dealt with in any authority, and it's something, if you're in my authority at the moment, you wouldn't want to be in the room where I'm talking to some of our planners about the subject area. It's just mind-blowing. That's our biggest problem. It's not so much the output of the decision, it's getting a decision, getting movement, getting truth in what's happening. It just doesn't happen. And that I find extremely frustrating. So yes, welcome to change, more money, but output for applicants, no improvement, I don't think.
Yes, I think the increase in fees is intended to, help develop capacity and capability in the planning functions of local planning authorities. One would hope that it facilitates that, but at the end of the day, you need a certain number of professional people in the sector. But thank you for raising that, Neil.
And I think from Mark's perspective, in charge of the people who you're talking about, the Development Corporation has a good record for determining applications in accordance with the statutory timetable. Now, often that is because there's an agreed extension, but I think you'd be hard to find a planning authority that has a better record than Mark's team on that. And I think we need to try and keep that up to deal with the issues that you're referring to, John.
Yeah, I mean, we are obviously generally agreeing bespoke timetables, and it is interesting at the moment, as I say, I mean, sort of over the last few months, we have had a number of cases where certainly a number in Northfleet, two sort of commercial schemes in Northfleet, where we're trying to push for a decision. But the developers don't seem to want us to make a decision because they don't quite know what they want to do with the sites yet. So it's a slightly strange situation where in some areas we are chasing, we are wanting to make progress. We just aren't getting the information that they want to have approved, regardless of whether it's something that we would be able to approve. So it's odd in those instances.
And in a recent meeting we had with Director General of our sponsor department, strengths that we actually stressed about urban development corporations was the planning powers, their continuity, professional representation on those. Dare I say, the non-politicisation of planning decisions and processes as well. So we really felt that was a strength of the Urban Development Corporation. So hopefully the Act will improve things. Work went into royal assent. And John, I did want to make the opportunity of just congratulating you on your £20 million award from the Levelling Up Fund as well. Actually liked that on X, so there was X-engagement on that when I saw that come out in your social media. That's great news.
Well,
yeah, well done. So are there any other comments on this paper, Mark's paper? No? Good. We've had a good discussion there. Thank you very much. Kevin, you got into position for Ebbsfleet Living and you chatted a bit more.
No problem.
Do you want to take us through everything you've been this long, you and the team?
Yeah, thank you. Well, it is covering a longer period, so the autumn period this time, so there's quite a lot of content in there. I'll take that as read and put a couple of highlights and a couple of updates since the paper was written. In terms of highlights, we particularly wanted to draw attention to the great work that This Must Be the Place programme that achieved over its 3 years. It concludes at the end of March next year, but it's done some fantastic work, which was celebrated in a conference in Woodville Halls in Gravesend earlier this month, where over 100 people attended that conference. There was a link to a short film on the paper. If people get a chance to look at it, it's very short, so it gives you a sort of sense of what's been achieved for that. And we want to continue with that work. We are continuing to support the Young Persons Design Group, who are actually going to help us with many projects moving forward. So it's not a project that's concluded. And Cement Fields are one of the national portfolio holders for Arts Council, so we'll continue to work with them moving forward. Also, linked to the programme was the series of 6 films that were produced called Our Future, Our Past, Whisper It to Me, which was really fantastic. When we saw they were launched again in Woodville Halls, over 200 people attended that. And they paired young people with older residents in the surrounding communities to sort of see their feeling about home and place, and with the backdrop of Ebbsfleet and their context of Ebbsfleet. These films are going to be shown around Kent over the forthcoming months, and I think they're looking for the national launch because there was such a rich quality of film that was produced through that. So really commend them on that. It was also notable over the autumn that we have a lot of national initiatives and are now having an Ebbsfleet presence, which was encouraging. So we did have, through Cohesion Plus, another national portfolio holder locally who did a Black History Month event in Ebbsfleet. We had a Mental Health Awareness Day in Ebbsfleet, and we saw the formation of the first Ebbsfleet Business Network. So it's really encouraging to see these things starting to grow in the Garden City. And just to update on a couple of points that have occurred since the paper was written. Firstly, to note that the community board met last week. Jeremy suggested one of the residents take over as chair, so they've now elected Mark Cawthorne, a resident of Castle Hill, as the new chair. And we want to, obviously, on behalf of all of those, wanted to thank Jeremy for the 3 years that he's been chairing that group. And obviously, Jeremy, John, and Ian still continue to sit on the group to represent this board. But it's interesting to see the next chapter with a resident running that. And also, since the paper was written, the Ebbsfleet Garden City Trust Community Fund panel have met. Valerie sat on that, along with myself. I'm really pleased to see that they had a really good upsurge in applications to that, and 7 applications through that fund was approved earlier this week. And finally, just to say that the resident satisfaction survey concludes this week, and we'll bring the results of that to board in January. And just to say, we set ourselves a very ambitious target of 1,000 responses, and we have exceeded the 1,000 responses, and that's balanced half in existing communities and half in the new communities. So we'll look forward to sharing the results of that with you in January.
Fascinating. Board, any comments, observations? Yes, Simon.
Yeah, just a couple for myself. Really good report. So in terms of section 2.5, I'm interested in this Innovate UK.
Yeah.
What I do is Innovate UK in various kinds. Exactly what will this look like in practice in terms of delivering this connectivity and using the tool? What sort of tools are they envisaging that will be brought forward as part of that?
Yeah, so
and then secondly, just to notice sort of area 3.1 about a competition for Castle Hill Community Centre. Some users having to compensate others to secure bookings. Is this, are we sort of getting a sort of bidding war in terms of usage of the community centre?
I'll start on that point. Obviously, we are very limited in terms of venues to have events. Where people have had block bookings for considerable periods of time, and other people want to use them, they've had to compensate them to use that. So it really just reinforces the importance of bringing more community infrastructure forward as quick as possible. And we also heard from other people that they're just not being able to run the activities they had. A lot of them were dependent on the Blue Cafe to do activities. The Blue Bean Cafe are subsidising that to a degree, and they're having to have staff there, and they've now said they can't do it as much as they had previously. So it's just really feedback from the community that they really, really value us emphasising community infrastructure as soon as possible in terms of delivery, because as we're having a vibrant community emerging, it does need infrastructure to support that. So that's where that's coming from. In terms of the Innovate UK project, it's obviously it's going to be designed by the community for the community so the tools that emerge will depend on what the community say they want to have in terms of connections. We had the first kickoff meeting a couple of weeks ago. lots of people really got it. They really got the value that could come from better connectivity within neighbourhoods themselves, between neighbourhoods, and in particular this issue of social cohesion between the new and existing communities. And the whole point is this is about building capacity in the residents for the future. So can we leave them tools that help them have a vibrant community when we leave? So it's all about building capacity and giving them the tools to support that capacity long term. We can't tell you what the tools would be because they genuinely are going to come from what people tell us they think would be useful at this stage. But we will do a session with the community board, hopefully early in the year, just get their input to it. And we'll be having other focus sessions with local groups over the next couple of months.
We are the sort of lead body in that. Receiving grant from Innovate.
We jointly bid with a company called AMBID, which are the Imperial University professors that I mentioned. So we jointly bid and we're jointly responsible for delivering that grant.
Thank you, Simon. Yes.
Just one quick point. That point about the relationship with Imperial. What was the final outcome from Imperial undergraduates visiting? Feedback and learnings that they gave and what we got out of it. Are you doing it again?
So we had the sort of 15 projects that ran and they give us the input from that. A couple of them we have explored, one called the Stakes, delivering it, hasn't been able to be delivered so far. However, the research that was developed, that's in part how we've managed to secure this grant from Innovate UK, because we already have almost 5,000 hours of research done by students, which forms the foundation of the project of resident connectedness. So that all the research we did through the Imperial students, we will use that as the basis to then build upon that for this next project. The reason we've done it through the private element of Imperial is because Innovate UK is very keen on supporting the private sector. So from an Innovate UK perspective, they're really interested to see how we could capitalize on some of these tools we might develop and some of the research we've done to create something that might be of value in the market of the future. Obviously, from our perspective, we're trying to support our residents. The Innovate UK perspective is kind of like, will something come from this that might be valuable to be exploited? So an exploitation plan is key to getting the funding from them, but it's obviously not necessarily our focus, but it is something we are looking at. So we are building really on the Imperial work to do this resident connected project.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. All right. Thank you very much for that. That's for noting. That then brings us to, I think, the final part on page today, social value update. Lara, please take us through it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the board. I will take it as read that you've read the report and hopefully have the opportunity to read the draft impact report for the whole of 2022 as well. So I would just like to say that this is the first social value report that we have produced so far. Emphasise that it is a place-based report, so it's not just about EDC, but about all of our developers and our house builders, as well as the benefits that we could all bring to the residents of Ebbsfleet and across Dartford and Gravesham boroughs also. Just to put it into context, in July 21, the board agreed that we should measure social value, establish a framework and use the social value portal for measurement and reporting. And the report not only looks at the implementation of that, but also the priority areas, our published TOMs, themes, outcomes and measures, and also the value that has been created in terms of proxy value as well during 2022. So just to pick out three highlights really. One is that over the calendar year of 2022, over £20 million worth of proxy value was generated or created in social value. Over 19 million of that was through a local labour workforce. So that's really a good foundation to build on. Our activity as EDC directly over our three pillars of sustainable development, including environment, economy and community, also added another £1 million in terms of social value to that.
So that's the first one. The second one is that the report itself, the impact report that's going to be published, although it does publish those figures, more importantly, it looks at the case studies and the benefits that have been delivered to individuals, to community groups, to the built environment itself as well. So the case studies are really important, and we are continuing to build case studies moving forward into 2023. And finally, I would like to ask the board to approve the publication and note how we're going to build on what we think is a strong foundation into 2023, and also include the third measurement, which is through our own EDC procurement process in our report for 2023. So does anybody have any questions?
Fantastic. Yeah, good. Yes, I'm going to let Jeremy come in first on this one.
Thank you. It's just a presentational issue. I absolutely understand this is a review of 2022, but it seems really odd to be publishing and to permission to publish something that's got 2022 on the cover of it. I'm just wondering whether you thought of maybe talking about looking back or something like that, looking back to 2022. I mean, it's a very trivial issue, but if I go through my door, I think, well, that's been there a while, and you know, it's like, I just wonder whether there's a way of us looking forward a little bit and saying this is a backward review, this is looking back to a great year or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we could sort of change the tone of voice
a little bit, I think, because it just looks as if it's the 2022 review that sort of I've missed, when in fact it is a current review of looking back over that period of time.
You could just downgrade that to this is the
latest review.
Back,
yeah,
and you have a small bridge as that.
Yeah.
I guess we wanted to establish a baseline as a starting point. So that's why. And, you know, one of the key learnings from the whole implementation of social value is the amount of time it takes, which is why the report is now, you know, the end of 2023, when it was last year's report, but it has taken that long to collate all of the data. I have been collating this year's data as we've been going along, so hopefully I'll be able to publish 2023 reports in a more timely manner. But yeah, maybe the tone of voice.
I think so. I mean, it's an outside. That's my impression of it was that this looked like an old report. And it's a shame because it's got so much value stuff in it that we ought to be talking about how valuable it is to look back at that sample year. You know.
Right. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Simon.
Yeah, just in the lessons learned section, talk about some of the challenges you've had to get developers to partner contribute data. Most organisations have a CSR responsibility, so they should be reporting this data through their own reporting process. So I'm just intrigued as to whether that's a mismatch in timing, or we're capturing things in a different way to the way that they're capturing their own corporate reporting purposes. Are the things that we can do to make this a sort of more linear approach that makes it easier to harvest data for others to incorporate in the reports that we're producing?
Yes, and yes to the first question. They should be, you know, collating this data. I think there is a very marked distinction between those organisations who are perhaps doing major infrastructure programs or more commercially based programs who are used to dealing with public money. They are very forthcoming with their figures because they are capturing this. The more commercial house builders don't necessarily capture this information and have the ability to record on it.
I think it's a bit about the house builder model. So we will generally be engaging with the regional businesses or whatever. And this sort of stuff, like a lot of other things, they will be capturing it and reporting it. It will be in their annual reports. The trouble you get is it's getting out to the people that it may not be disaggregated, but we can do a bit more to see whether it is disaggregated down into the regional businesses. But that's, I think that when Laura and I started this work, I said I think it will be difficult to get it out house because of the way that they are structured. And a lot of this kind of thing we don't. That's sort of how it's turning out. But we can see whether we've probably got to go to the centre and see whether they can disaggregate it. Because they will be collecting it, they'll be reporting it.
Oh, they have to. Yeah.
So.
Okay.
It's one of those areas, forgive me, it's one of those areas though where it goes through PR. It's an entirely different science, lack of science. So you don't, I mean, as a commercial enterprise, you would not be publishing sort of things that didn't work so well. Well, in fact, that's where the real value of the information is, isn't it? But I think we're more open, so we can say the challenges. I think if you went to big house builder, as it went up the organisation down, which we got PR to be, it kind of would just get, can't say that.
And I think one of the visions I had about publishing these figures was that it might compel those who haven't been reporting to report, because the figures are amazing. 19 million in local labour is just incredible. So why wouldn't you want to be part of that story as a developer?
Right, thank you. Is it?
It's just sort of building on that 90 million. It looks like Countryside are a significant portion of that. And I was just wondering if there's a reason for that, or if there's a way of encouraging others to, and maybe it relates back to how they sort of report the figures, but actually, if Countryside are delivering that much, some of the others are probably delivering more, and whether they could be encouraged to go even further.
Yeah, I think Countryside are very good at capturing their subcontractors, local labour force figures as well. And of course, they did have the 2 sites in 2022. So Springhead Park was still under development and Ashmere was just starting. So they literally do have quite a lot of people on the ground.
I very much doubted some of the difference of their actual reports, because most of them will be using same subcontractors from the same area. Similar. It is about the reporting of capture. That does skew it.
All right, Valerie.
Sorry, what was coming on the back of that? But my instinct is that, forgive me, but perhaps we're also a little bit light on valuing our own, because £1 million seems such a significant amount. But when I just think about the reports, the fantastic reports we hear from Kevin at every board meeting, and the positive benefits that must be derived in, for example, mental health, I suspect aren't necessarily all being captured. So I don't know if there's a way of, refining how we review that fantastic input, because I do believe contribution is probably greater than.
Yes, because some of the measures, some of the Tom's measures, they just count pound for pound values.
Yes.
So a particularly innovative initiatives to help with mental health and well-being, etc. So have been talking to important about how we then actually put a value on the benefit to the individuals, as well as the pound for pound investment that we're putting in. So we're hoping that from 2024 they will be able to develop some TOMs so that we can capture that as well.
That'd be great, because it's only intuition, but it feels a bit light to me given the level of activity.
Because if you look at an employability programme, for example, it's the money you've invested plus the time you've invested, and then there is social value to the benefit to that individual. So if you can do that with sort of an economic theme, then can we do that with health and well-being, community, and particularly environment as well? It's difficult to capture the social value in planting 100 trees. The bodies that measure this kind of thing look at it from the size of a football pitch kind of thing, and that gives you, and then it's over the period of 50 years. But we intuitively know that the benefit of planting those trees does have a massive social value, and we can't wait 50 years to report on it. Yeah.
You mentioned mental health, but actually the number of volunteers that are engaged in community activities and so on.
Yes, well, there is an actual proxy value for volunteering time, and it's greater than £1. I think it's more like £17 per hour per person. So that does have that does have a greater value, proxy value.
All right. Conversation there. Thank you, Valerie. Great report. Fantastic work. Thank you very much, you and the team, for all of that. That then, there is obviously a decision for us here. You can see, so I'm assuming the board is comfortable with the decision there. Agreed. Yes, excellent. Right. That then brings us to the end of today's part 1 part of the board meeting. Again, we've had an excellent set of questions from members of the general public. Responses to those, as always, will be issued on our website. So I said earlier, thank you very much for joining us during the course of this year, and we look forward to seeing you in 2024. Thank you.